Howdy doody buckaroonies, the hairy therapist here with another episode of Feelings Go Ouchie. As creators, we naturally strive for perfection. We want to create the best possible form of our work, and why wouldn't we? It's hard to not want to be awesome. We aim for the bestseller. We want the hit record and the celebrity guest chef appearance. More than anything, we so deeply want Exhibit to pimp our ride. But what if we're missing something really important by only accepting the pursuit of the good and the great? This is another video I've wanted to make for a very long time, so if you'll indulge me here, today I would really like to discuss the counterintuitive concept of the importance of doing bad work. By embracing the nature of mistakes and imperfection, we open new avenues for creativity and exploration, and ultimately, I think, can create more authentic and meaningful work. By not being afraid to fail, but accepting it as inevitable, creative block no longer matters or even exists because success is only a game of chance. Maybe it's time to embrace the suck. And maybe not sucking in the first place is what's holding back your creativity. Shitty framing device time. Johnny has a quarter, and he assumes that flipping it a few times will give him a 50-50 chance of landing on heads each time. What Johnny doesn't know is that this is a lie. But to understand why, we need to do a little bit of that math number speak stuff. Surprisingly, even if we land on heads 3 times out of 10 total tosses, that's actually well within the bounds of what would be considered normal. To get a more reliable 50-50 distribution, we need to increase the number of total flips. So, what does this have to do with anything? If you go out and write 10 songs, not all of them are gonna be good. If you submitted your book to 100 publishers, they're not all going to want to sign it. If you baked 100 cakes, they're not all equally cakey. In any system of chance, success has to have an opposite. That's just a plain and simple fact. No matter how good you are at something and no matter how hard you try, eventually you will fail at it. But success and failure are just a part of life, and although we're not necessarily quick to admit it, everybody experiences failure. This might seem pretty obvious on the surface, but I think that this is the true root of the problem here, and that's really hard to see when you're drowning in 100 failed attempts at making something great. After riding the high of a good creative result, it's hard to not feel this subconscious expectation that your next attempt at doing the thing is going to yield something of equal or greater value, but that's ridiculous when you really think about it. But this mindset of go big or go home is made all too easy to buy into thanks to all the bullshit we're constantly fed on things like social media. Everyone else is out there succeeding, so why aren't you? I talked about this in a previous video, but this is what I like to call the highlight paradox. It's the idea that we're constantly and almost exclusively exposed to the good rather than the truth of the situation. But it makes sense. It's not really in our nature or even in our best interest to broadcast all of our failures and shortcomings with the world. But this is also what makes it so easy to put other people on this sort of pedestal, rather than accept them as equally flawed. The simple fix for this mindset? You don't have to succeed at everything. But the compromise with this fix is that you have to make enough shitty stuff to find the turd with a diamond in it. More simply put, there's no way to make great work without doing work. Where the idea of making bad work seems to fall off with a lot of creators, though, is the idea that bad work has no value, so it's not worth making. And you can't force creativity, so what's the point in trying to be creative when there's nothing that you can make that's going to be any good? But defining value this way means it's contingent on other people using or enjoying the thing, but I don't think that's really the point. But I think there's a better and even stupider simple fix that I promise you will change your mindset towards failure forever. And that's learning to look at failure through the lens of experimentation. When a baby is learning to walk, they don't just try once and fall down and give up forever in a fit of rage against the muses that spoke to them to do so. They get up, try again, and eventually they figure it out a little bit at a time. With enough attempts, they begin to approach the result they wanted to achieve. When there's a greater than zero chance of something occurring, that means eventually the success of that option is inevitable. As much as I'd like to sit here being Mr. Blow Smoke Up Your Ass, hey, you can do it, champ, all you gotta do is believe, that's not the truth, and that's not the reality of the situation. The idea of success as an inevitability is a really comforting thought, but the important caveat here is that this requires a timeline, and in pretty much all cases, that timeline is unknown. So that raises the all too familiar question for any creative individual. Why should I bother trying at all when it might take a long time to see results, or I might fail altogether? It takes a lot of dedication and courage to take on any creative endeavor and to put a part of yourself into the world, especially when the outcome is so uncertain. However, cheesy as it may be, those who take that risk tend to find the real reward in the process itself. The joy of creation, the satisfaction of a job well done, and the potential for success are all worth the risk. And sometimes, the risk is half the fun. The value of experimentation is growth, and I truly believe that learning to cultivate a growth-oriented mindset is the fastest way to get what you're after as a creator and find that sense of fulfillment. And maybe that's worth a video on its own at some point if there's any interest in that. When you don't view failure as an absolute endpoint, the only thing left to do is improve. A musician might try a new instrument to find a new sound. An artist could paint in a different style. A business person might just quit and give up everything and find a new passion. Like the saying goes, if you want to make an omelet, you gotta fuck up a few eggs. By removing restrictions and expectations and learning to embrace the idea of disturbing a system of components, you can discover new ideas, learn more about yourself, and push the boundaries you didn't even know existed. A while back, I made an instrument library out of a viola, specifically because I didn't know how to play it. Dumb as this idea might have been, with how difficult the viola is to master, learning to embrace my absolute failure at doing things right, I was instead free to do them wrong, and I ended up with one of my favorite string libraries because of it. I cannot stress enough the importance of being willing to take risks with creativity. The best risks aren't just the big ones. I think that those are the only risks worth taking if you truly want to make progress as a creator. Unless you're risking your ability to win a fight with a freight train. Maybe don't do that. Perfection, by definition, is unattainable. And perfectionism is one of the most well-known double-edged swords to creators. It's helpful to make you want to put in the work and effort, but it's also something that leads to an unhealthy focus on self-criticism and an inability to accept the results of anything less. Instead, learning to adopt a growth mindset with creativity not only helps you to set realistic goals and standards, it allows you to focus more on self-improvement and progress, both of which you can actually measure. A true sense of fulfillment comes from experience and isn't contingent on an outcome. But if, after all this, you're still left wondering why you should bother creating in the first place, maybe it's worth remembering that entropy means everything ends in chaos, and no matter what you do, it all ends up useless anyway. Maybe my friend Carl put it best.
It don't matter. None of this matters.
I really enjoy making these videos on the mental health aspects and the philosophy aspects of creating because I think they're interesting and they're things we don't tend to talk about very openly, which is unfortunate. My goal isn't necessarily to present some kind of solution in these videos, but to just open up a discussion because I think it's really important that we have one. If you have some other life advice or sage wisdom about all this, feel free to leave that down in the comments below, and if you think there's another topic worth tackling in a future video, let me know. If you want to support the channel and more videos like this one, you can do so with the links down in the description. There's a ton of ways you can do that. I do appreciate it. And of course, as always, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something, and I hope this inspires you to get out there and make something awesome.